Pokemon has been one of the most enjoyable sleigh rides for the past 2.5 decades. And I'm sure you know about that. We've had plenty of ups and plenty of downs. So let's go on a long adventure and see all of these ups and downs through the series. And of course, we're going to start off with the original Red, Blue, and Yellow. Pokemon Green is also a part of this, but if you're not from Japan, you probably didn't play it. So let's jump into the whole story of the original Pokemon games. And also, if you like this content, consider subscribing to the channel. I appreciate all the love and support, and let's get started. Pokemon is one of the biggest series that Nintendo has had on their consoles. Game Freak seems to work independently from their parent company Nintendo. Not to talk about future iterations too much, but it's pretty obvious when Game Freak is completely in control. But regardless, Pokemon's been the same for plenty of years. When it comes to the first generation, this did start it all, but it's pretty simple. And if you haven't played a Pokemon game before, then let me hit you up. Within the original games of Pokemon, you only play as one character. That character is named Red. Now, of course, you can give this character unique names, but the Pokemon trainer's canon name for the first games is Red. Also, within the original games, you cannot change your gender. There is only male in the original games and not a female. Nowadays, that would be a crazy thing to do, but 2 decades ago, it was perfectly fine. So you play as the Pokemon trainer Red, and your job is to go on a full adventure. A man named Professor Oak tasks you to do something that he couldn't do. Take his Pokemon Dex and go see all 151 Pokemon. Needless to say, this is a kid's dream come true. Being a 10-year-old kid not having to go to school, and plus you get to go on an adventure by yourself. The difference is within the world of Pokemon, you get to capture these creatures and plus fight with them. Pokemon battling is huge within the Pokemon world. Plus you have a specific rival. Your rival's name being Blue, or what some people know him as, Gary. As mentioned before, your job is to go around the whole region and at least see all these Pokemon. But how can you do that if you don't have a Pokemon? Oh, don't worry, 10-year-old brat, Professor Oak got you. Within the Kanto region, you'll choose between these 3 Pokemon starters: Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle. Similar to every other region in the future, you'll have a choice between these 3 Pokemon. Your grass, fire, and water Pokemon will probably be your main staple to your team. Depending on the typing you choose will also shape out your Pokemon team in the future. Now, if you've been a part of the Pokemon community, you probably know the fan favorite here. But as a Pokemon fan that's not biased towards any of the 3, each Pokemon has its own unique qualities. By picking Charmander, you're getting a Pokemon that doesn't have too much competition. There aren't too many fire-type Pokemon within the region. Plus, his final evolution strength is one of the strongest in the game. On the downside, he probably is the weakest defensively, plus you'll have a hard time through the first gym leaders. While looking at Bulbasaur, you'll have an easier time with gym leaders earlier within the game. But you do have weaknesses, a lot. So you'll have to make sure your team covers a lot of Bulbasaur's weaknesses to make sure he doesn't get knocked out. The final Pokemon here is Squirtle, and he's probably the slowest of the bunch. A Pokemon that takes his time having to OHKO other Pokemon, but at least you know with his high defense that he won't be knocked out as well. Issue here is that there's a lot of water Pokemon within this region. But overall, no matter what starter Pokemon you pick, you'll never feel like you picked the wrong one. However, for this generation, there's also Pokemon Yellow. Pokemon Yellow will give you another starter Pokemon, which is Pikachu. Pikachu is the only starter Pokemon within all main games that's an electric type. In this case, Pikachu is a good typing because electric types aren't very common, but you also have the chance to get every single starter Pokemon mentioned before in Pokemon Yellow. But it's up to you who you think the best starter Pokemon is. And if you have a strong will about it, please let me know in the comments down below. But now that you know the fact about what Pokemon is, let's talk about your goals within the game. As I mentioned before, your goal is to complete the Pokédex. However, you don't have to. There's 2 goals that the game will make you do just to complete the game in general. The first goal is to stop a criminal organization from taking over the world. We're just going to move that to the side for now. The second goal is to become a Pokemon champion, and to do that you must collect all the gym badges and beat the Elite Four. Now when it comes to collecting the gym badges, you have 8 gym leaders in total to beat. In order, you'll have Brock, Misty, Lieutenant Surge, and Erica, and then you should have Koga, Sabrina, Blaine, and Giovanni. Now most Pokemon trainers may struggle with the first 2 mainly because of their starters typing, but other than that, the only other gym leader that should give you some trouble is maybe Sabrina, but that's just because Alakazam is big body for no reason. Once you collect all the gym badges, your next job is go beat the Elite Four. The Elite Four is a bit more difficult because you have to fight multiple trainers in a row. That means no going back to Nurse Joy to get some healing, that's not happening. So the Elite Four consists of these trainers: Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, and Lance. These trainers do fall in the same hole as the gym leaders, which is having monotypes. Even though technically they may have one or two Pokemon that's not the same typing, you're going to see these trainers monotype regardless. And looking at their teams, the only trainer that should give you a small issue is probably Lance. Lance does have very strong and fast Pokemon with very great moves at this time. But you can forget about all of that because the champion is what really matters. That rival we mentioned before named Gary or Blue becomes the main champion. Of course, that's such a sweet story, but the better part is he has a very great team. Depending on the starter that you picked, Gary's team will be different. And unlike other trainers, Gary thought about his team composition plenty. If you look at his teams, only 2 Pokemon will share the same typing. But it really doesn't matter because you may not fight this version of Gary, or he has a Pokemon that can counter it. Not to spend too much time on this topic, but Gary might be the best trainer in the Kanto region. But it doesn't matter because he just got this spot and you'll beat him anyways. So overall, Blue might be the best rival you'll have in Pokemon games. His snarky personality plus his goals to reach your dream that you want makes him a good rival. But speaking of competition, that leads into the other point I have about the criminal organization. The most iconic team of the series, Team Rocket. Now Team Rocket appears multiple times throughout your journey with the stupid R on their chest. Now I get that they're not rocking Supreme, but at least they're all uniform and formal. Not only do they rock the same clothes, but they rock the same Pokemon. Realistically, you won't have a hard time fighting any of the grunts unless you get poisoned. The main challenge comes from their boss Giovanni that doesn't use the same type of Pokemon. Now it's pretty simple. What Giovanni wants is he wants world domination. To get specific about his goal, he wants to take strong Pokemon and sell them for a profit. Now Pokemon will have multiple organizations that go against you, but this team is pure evil. Team Rocket has no goal in their mind except to make money. But then again, as humans, sometimes we're the same. Team Rocket was so influential that they even made them the bad team for the next game. Now that is for a future video, so we'll move on. Playing the game, you'll probably never sympathize with Giovanni or any other grunts. Most of them seem to know what they're doing and they will wear that R proud. So logically, you'll just use them as XP to move on to your next gym battle. You will probably find it weird that a lot of other people won't interact with Team Rocket. This will change for future iterations, but for the original games, it's very rare. Anyway, now you should get the idea of what the first generation consists of. Of course, there are plenty of big shot areas that will really captivate you. The SSN is a huge boat that you get on for a nice cruise ride. Realistically, you don't do anything in there but battle other trainers, including your rival, but at least it feels like it's a little extra section of the game. Another is Lavender Town, a huge tower at which people bury their deceased Pokemon. A huge rumor that has not been confirmed is why your rival was there. During your follow-up battle with your rival, you realize that he's missing a Pokemon that he once had. His Raticate is suddenly gone and you just fought that Pokemon on the SSN. Now listen, I'm not the one to blame nobody, but could it be you? Who knows? But besides that, you get a nice cutscene with Marowak and her child Cubone. Moving along, you have other places you can battle and train, such as the Cyclist Road and the Safari Zone. Both of these areas are basically copy-paste to future games, so it's worth mentioning that they started here. But a huge secret that you may get if you break your game hard enough, you can fight Professor Oak using a top-tier team. Most likely on your first playthrough, you probably won't get this opportunity, but it's nice to know in some way you can still fight him. I promise you these other professors are not doing this. But since we're talking about some key things in Kanto, we should probably talk about the Pokemon. Within the Kanto generation, many of the Pokemon were planned out pretty well by Game Freak. Most of the Pokemon's existence has a reasoning besides the Pokédex. For example, we can look at Slowbro. Of course, Slowbro is an evolution of the Pokemon Slowpoke. You can see that Slowbro has a shell on his tail that Slowpoke does not have. And where does that shell come from? Well, just from the shell Pokemon Shelder. When a Shelder bites the tail of a Slowpoke, he's supposed to evolve to Slowbro. Now, this is not represented within the Pokemon games very well, but it is in the anime. But at least Game Freak has a reasoning as to why Slowbro looks the way he does. Another that's really a rumor is Gengar and Clefable. Fans believe that Gengar is the ghost version of Clefable. Besides the uncanny appearance of both of the Pokemon, you can assume that it makes sense. A ghost type Pokemon that usually shows up at night, then a normal type Pokemon that is changed later to a fairy that also only shows up at night. But there is no guarantee that this is true. But at least there's other type of Pokemon that have the same type of speculation or background. The most popular and true story is Mewtwo being a clone of Mew. Within the games, you'll have to look around Cinnabar Island to find information about Mewtwo. But when you find him at the end of a game in a hidden cave, you realize he's ran away. Again, the Pokemon anime does a much better job showing this background, but at least Game Freak gave some type of reasoning as to why they exist today. Now, I'm sure that we all understand that the Kanto region is loved, not just by the fans, but that includes Game Freak as well. These Pokemon are constantly getting new evolution forms, regional forms, and much more. But make no mistake, just because fans and Game Freak love the original games does not mean that they had perfect mechanics. On the screen's a list of problems that happened within the original Pokemon games. Feel free to pause at any point because you'll probably want to read these yourself. I just like to point out some of the big problems here. Constriction moves such as Fire Spin and Bind will cause the victim to not use any moves. These moves don't just hinder you from leaving battle, they hinder you from making a play. In other words, it's bad. Here's another one. Did you know that critical hit moves were not based off of a chance? You can still use moves such as Focus Energy to increase the chance of getting it, but it's not a baseline percentage that every Pokemon has equally. Instead, your crit chance is based off of the Pokemon's speed. Remember when I said before that Alakazam is a monster within the game? This is exactly the reason why. Pokemon that have a higher speed stat have a higher chance to crit. In other words, it's dumb. Playing Pokemon Red, Blue, or Yellow, you'll come across some of these issues. Unfortunately, you'll have to deal with it. Overall, this is what the original Pokemon games has to offer. If you've never played one of these old Pokemon games, you're doing yourself a disservice not trying it out. Not saying you'll fall in love with these old Pokemon games either, but it's still worth trying out. So let me know what you think about these original Pokemon games in the comments down below. And with that, I'm guessing you're wondering what's the next thing to watch. Well, lucky for you, we got Pokemon all across this channel. If you want to see what I'd rate the original Kanto series, it's over here. But if you're in the mood for some newer Pokemon content, it's over here. With that, I appreciate y'all for watching. I'll see y'all on the next one. Take care.